What up, Wastelanders? Christopher here, Gaslands NorCal. Thanks for joining me once again for another conversion video. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that a while ago I did a Mini Cooper Tank Wastelands Taxi mashup. And that one was received pretty well. So this time, I'm doing kind of the same thing, but I'm going to be using a 70 Honda N600, and I want to take it where we don't need any roads. So I'm going to be using some of these hover engines that I got from Anything 4-Wheel Drive. Great guy. He's got lots of really cool stuff on his site. Definitely check that out. I've got the Waterslide decals going on from Green Stuff World. Got some mesh that I'm going to be putting inside the windshield or the windows coming from Hayland Terrain. Of course, going to be using the Monument Hobbies Pro Acryl. This time I'm going with the warm yellow. Gives it a great taxi color. And got some armor and everything else going on. So I've already got it all stripped down and everything. So we're just going to start painting it up and see what becomes of it. Alright, so we're getting ready to paint. Now, I absolutely love this Monument Hobbies Pro Acryl line. I don't think I can say anything bad about it, whether you're using an airbrush or just using it with regular paintbrush or anything. The airbrush, I have found that you just need a tiny bit of thinner to go along with it, and it goes out just beautifully. So let's get the yellow going on here with a little bit of the airbrush thinner, and we'll get this one painted up. See? Absolutely gorgeous. Now let's move on to the blacks. Alright, did some of the fine detail work, got the headlights and the turn signals and stuff going on, the license plate and all the handles and knobs and everything. Oops. So yeah, that's just progressing along. Got all the black dried and everything. Now I just like to, after I get everything base coated in the black, I just like to do a dry brush of silver just to make it kind of pop, and then we'll go back in and work some of the details as we go along. But first I want to see where all my edges and stuff are at. So let's get the black all dry brushed with some silver, and we'll see what needs to be worked on next. Alright, so I got some of the fine detail work done on the motors, the engines, some of the weapons and stuff done. Got the taxi all painted up so you can see the word taxi in there. And I got the mesh cut out for the windows. And I'm going to put them on the inside, and this takes a little bit of finesse when you're doing it. I always like to make sure I get it cut out first so it's going to fit in there just right. Kind of delicate to get in just the right spot. So I get it in there, and then I just put a drop of super glue like in the top and the bottom, and I hit it with the Insta-Set so it stays really quick. That's the best method that I have found to do it, that works out pretty well. So let's go ahead and get our mesh on the inside of the windows. Alright, so we got everything back together, got the windshield and everything back in there, and the mesh over the windows. Cautionary note, when you're doing it that way, you really have to make sure that your interior is kind of shaved or sanded down so it's going to fit over the inside of where your mesh screen is at. Otherwise, everything won't fit on there just right. So keep that in mind if you're doing it that way. So next we're going to be moving on to the Waterslide decals. Probably goes without saying, so that's what I'm going to say it. It's easiest to cut it to the shape and size that you want before you start getting it on there, before you stick it in the water. So that's going to go on there on the sides. And got the other pieces that are going to be going kind of on the top, on the hood of the car. And then this piece, which is clear, so that's going to work out, is going to go on the very top, and then we'll get the taxi sign going on top of that. Once we get done with those and get everything on there and gets all dried, always like to make sure I touch it up with some Citadel Color Technical Storm Shield that protects the water slide and kind of keeps it on there. So when I'm doing any other weathering, adding the Agrax Earthshade or the dry brushing with the dust or rust or anything else, that will keep it on there. So let's get on to the water slide step and we'll get those on the model. All right, got a good looking taxi going on. Would fit well in, you know, any kind of urban area. Aside from the window meshing, yeah, this looks like a regular, normal old taxi. You know, get the taxi sign on there, and yeah, it'd just be a regular taxi. But you know what? That's not good enough. We are going to Gaslands it now. Gonna rust it up. Gonna weather it. Gonna do some chipping with the old sponge method that I like. Get some chipping going on. Get the armor on here. Get the weapons, and then we will get the hover engines on there. And yeah, printing off the base and the stance, we can have it hovering up there, and yeah, this is gonna be good. So let's start getting it weathered up. All right, now for the chipping, I like to use the MIG chipping paint, and I really like doing these sponge methods. And what I mean by the sponge method is take a sponge. Usually like a softer sponge you'll find in the packing, like if you're getting a miniature or something like that, where it's more of a fine stuff, so not like the kitchen sponge. Just tear a piece of that off and dip it into the chipping stuff, and then to make sure you don't have a whole glob of it on there, just dab it on a paper towel until it starts looking like the chipping on the paper towel, and then just kind of go around the edges where you think the paint might be chipped off. And this also really helps out if you have any kind of painting errors. Like you see, I got a little bit of silver right there. I had it on my finger when I was moving stuff around. So I'm just gonna chip that portion up, and voila, all gone. And then like any of the edges that would normally be chipped, like for an older car, one that's been beat up, so any of the sharp edges, and just go around and do that. I like doing this before I stick the armor on, because I figure somebody took an old car that was all beat up and chipped up, and then they converted it to Gaslands purposes. So they put it over the chip paint, and then we will add more of the rust and stuff on there. So I'm gonna go around, finish getting this all chipped up, and then we will move on to the armor. All right, chipping all done, looking good, looking all rusted and beat up like a old taxi would. So now we're gonna get the armor on. I got this front armor, the bendable, that works out really well. Gonna stick that on the front. Got some armor for the back windshield, and then we'll get the weapons on there, and then we'll do some more weathering. Gonna get the Agrax going on so I can bring the fine edges and stuff, make them pop, and then we'll get the rust started going on there. So let's get the armor on, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, got the armor going on. Just super glued it on there. Nothing critical about that. I am gonna hit it with some Agrax first to bring out all the lines and everything else. It's what I always use. Agrax like the go-to for a lot of stuff, especially when you're doing Gaslands, working on metal parts and everything. Kind of put it on there a little liberally, and then I like to wash it off just so you don't get a whole lot of gunk and you can't see anything. So let's get the Agrax going on, and then we'll move on to the rusting. All right, now for the rusting, I'm going to use several different methods or products. I'm going to start off with some of this AK light rust wash. Then I'm also going to hit it with some of this Vallejo light rust. And then finally, I'm going to do some of this Vallejo orange rust. I like using the combination. It makes it come out really well. But before I do that, I want to get the engines on, because the engines I'm going to make rusty as well, because this whole thing is just going to be a kind of janky, rusty, questionable Gaslands hover taxi. So I'm gonna get the engines on, and that way I can get everything rusted up at once. Had to sand down the bottom of this to make this so it would fit on there right. And then I'm gonna get the back engines just mounted just like they were tires. Should go on there pretty well. Still working with the idea of how to make everything look like it's gonna hover. I don't want it just sitting on the engines. So yeah, always hard to find the right piece of plastic and everything that's gonna fit perfectly and be flat and everything. So playing with this idea, we'll see if it works out. But first, let's get the engines on there, and then we'll go on from there and get some rust on. All right, engines are all on there. Looking really cool, if I do say so myself. It sits just fine, just, you know, setting in all the engines and stuff, but still, I want to figure out something to make it look like it's actually hovering. So that's going to be the next thing we figure out after we get done with the rusting. So we're going to start off with the AK Light Rust Wash, and it is a wash, so it goes on very, very fluid, very liquidy. So you apply it with a larger brush, and then just kind of let it sit there and dry. And it comes out with the lighter rust color, and then I go over the other areas with a different rust to add more effect to it and stuff. But this gets a really good start for everything. See, it just kind of fills in all the nooks and crannies, like, you know, rust wood, whatever it's running down and whatnot. Don't like to oversaturate stuff because then it's just a little much. See, it just fills in really well all the little nooks and crannies and stuff. So we're gonna get this going on first. Being that it's very liquid, it takes a while to dry. Only downside, but I like to multitask and do other things. I'll be printing something or painting something or getting my lunch ready for the morning, or, you know, baby talking the cat or something while I wait. So nothing too major, so we're just going to get this going on. Like I said, I want to get some of the engines rusted because it's a very janky Gaslands hover taxi. So we'll get this stuff going on, and once this dries, we will move on to the rest of the rust. Alright, so that step's all dry. Now we're going to move on to the AK Orange Rust. This is probably one of my favorite products, and I use it in a lot of my builds. I really like how you can do the drips and everything else. Gotta use kind of a fine brush, but it works out really, really well, and I really just enjoy using it. So let's get this shaken up and get some rust going on. Now you can see I've already added some of the rust on here, added next to the weapons and everything else. I also came across some other water slides from a previous build, the 24/7. I don't know if you can see that, 7 days a week, because, you know, taxis run all the time. Grab an Uber, grab a Lyft. So yeah, let's get the rest of this rust on here, and then we'll have to figure out how we're going to do the lift kit. But I got some ideas on how we're going to lift it. So just like with the other rust, just kind of get it on in the areas where you figure rust is going to be at, like in the cracks of the doors, along the base of the vehicle, anywhere where water or condensation or moisture might gather. That's where the rust is going to go. So we'll just continue to get this rusted up. Once we figure out how we're going to lift this baby up, we will call it good. All right, and there you have it. One rusted up hover taxi, custom made, ready built for the Wastelands. Really like how this one came out. Loving these engines from Anything 4-wheel drive. Definitely go to his site, check it out. Lots of really cool stuff. Not just hover engines, lift kits, all sorts of stuff. Figured out how I'm going to do the lift on this to make it float in the air. Got a printed base that I found on Thingiverse. I think this one's from Sablebadger. Added a piece of clear plastic in there and some brush and stuff. So yeah, it fits on there like just perfectly. So yeah, really enjoyed doing this build. Had a lot of fun. If you learned something, if you enjoyed watching the video, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you want to get notified when new content drops and support the channel, why don't you hit that subscribe? I would really appreciate it. Looking into doing some raffles later on in the year. You just got to figure out how I'm going to do that. So keep in mind that's going to be coming up as well. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Hope you did too. Until next time, Gaslands NorCal, signing out.